Spending time around the Great Lakes can cause a shift in our perception. They are so truly gargantuan that the word lake begins to take on a new meaning, making even the most sizable bodies of water feel small by comparison. Similarly, the more familiar we become with the ghosts that roam these waters, the more we learn that the same can be said about their stories. Paranormal experiences here can be so bizarre and complex and layered that many others start to sound, dare we say, straightforward. Hello, and welcome, my freshwater friends, to episode 10 of the About the Water podcast, an exploration of high strangeness on and around the Great Lakes. Today, you and I will visit two separate lakes, first Michigan and then Ontario, for two separate and seemingly straightforward ghost encounters. Encounters which may in fact turn out to be anything but straightforward, as their retelling now echoes about the water. Episode 10. Straightforward. Story 1. Time to go. This particular ghost story starts like many others. It was a dark and stormy night. But before we allow our minds to paint a scene that's too dark or foreboding, let's consider the setting. We're one block west of Lake Michigan, in Chicago, Illinois, about 7 miles north of downtown, on the busy and vibrant Sheridan Road. The Friday evening traffic is thick and sounds like rows of slow-moving push brooms, echoing off the soaring residential towers that line the street. Falling raindrops are illuminated by headlights and streetlights, making the city quite literally sparkle. We join real estate agent Ananya as she stands below the awning of 6118 North Sheridan Road, a 12-story residential high-rise. As she watched the rainy scene unfold in front of her, she couldn't help but think how beautiful it was. Ananya was excited to show her new listing to a potential buyer, Amy, and when she arrived, the two wasted no time in entering the lobby, heading for the elevators and up to the unit. Ananya had already been up to the unit to turn all of the lights on, so the home felt warm and inviting as soon as you stepped in. Inside, the unit was better than Amy had expected. It was dated, but very clean. It was small, but set to the backdrop of a gorgeous view of Lake Michigan. "I can't believe it, a water view within my price range," Amy whispered, as she crossed the main living room towards the dining area and kitchen. She then began to open all of the cabinets, standing back to inspect the layout. Amy also powered on the microwave, activated all 4 burners of the electric stove, and turned on the water faucet. She commented that everything seemed to be working and that the water pressure was to her liking. As Ananya began to explain to Amy that all of that would be checked during the inspection as well, Amy abruptly shushed her, looking down the hall towards the bedroom as if listening for something. Suddenly, Amy spun around and with wide eyes urgently ran for the door as fast as she could, sending 2 dining room chairs crashing onto the floor in the process. "Okay, time to go. We have to get out right now," she said frantically. Ananya quickly followed her through the door and into the hallway, asking what was the matter. It was then that Amy reached past Ananya, nearly knocking her over while forcefully pulling the door closed. She then moved rapidly towards the elevator and tapped the down button several dozen times. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Ananya asked. Amy kept glancing back at the unit door, nervously. I don't know I've never... Ananya patted Amy's back, assuring her that everything was okay. Amy replied, "There is something in there, and it did not want me there." The elevator arrived with a bing, one that startled Amy, nearly knocking her over. She then shoved her way through the opening doors and onto the elevator, beckoning for Ananya to follow her. I can't. I have to go shut everything off, Ananya said. As the elevator doors closed, Amy apologized to Ananya, saying that she would call her later and begged her to be careful in there. Not one to believe in ghosts or monsters, Ananya walked back to the unit, inserted her key, and opened the door. In the 60 seconds that the two had been in the hallway, every light had been carefully switched off. The microwave was off as well, but still showed that it had power. Every kitchen cabinet door had been closed, and the stove burners were manually turned off, as was the faucet. The two knocked-over chairs had been set back at the dining room table, one upright and correct, the other squared with the table perfectly and yet oddly positioned upside down. It was in that moment that Ananya became a believer. She backed out slowly and shut the door, locking it tight before rapidly shuffling towards the elevator. The next day, she handed the listing off to another agent, who sold the home quickly, and Ananya never heard from Amy again. Story 2. Locked Out. Associate real estate agent Casey had officially landed her dream job. She got to enjoy taking people on tours of houses and apartments all over her beloved Kingston, Ontario hometown. But as an associate agent, she avoided all of the pressures to close deals and hit goals that an agent feels. Christmas time was fast approaching, and both the vibe in the air, as well as the air itself, felt crisp and refreshing. Smiling groups with ice skates hung over their shoulders were making their way to the nearby Market Square skating rink. Decorations adorned storefronts and streetlights, and here and there, holiday music could be heard echoing down King Street, where Casey walked, not more than 2 blocks inland from Lake Ontario. It was like a scene out of a perfect holiday movie. As Casey approached the building she was showing, she saw her clients about a block away and waved cheerfully. It was a family of 4, Mom, Dad, and 2 older children. After some season's greetings and brief small talk, the group made their way up the front steps of the building and into the foyer. Casey always liked showing the buildings on King Street, and this building itself was no exception. It was several decades old, expertly remodeled, yet keeping its original exterior facade. Casey always thought the building looked like it was copied and pasted directly off the streets of Paris itself. The unit was on the first floor, just through the foyer and to the left. Casey unlocked the door and stood out of the way to let the family go through first. When they did, they let out a collective gasp. They loved it. The living room was huge, with tall ceilings and classic woodwork. There were giant windows that seemed to beckon you to have a seat on the ledge with a cup of hot chocolate and watch the city of Kingston stroll by. Casey waited in the kitchen as the group split up to go explore, and after a brief tour that couldn't have lasted more than a couple of minutes, the mother and father announced that they would be, in fact, purchasing the unit. The family decided on nearby lunch to celebrate and said they would reach out to Casey's agent shortly to submit an offer. Casey provided a couple of suggestions as to her favorite nearby restaurants and held the unit's door open for the group to exit. As she waved the group goodbye, however, Casey let go of the door, briefly catching a glimpse of her keys sitting on the counter before the door slammed itself shut. "Oh no," Casey said as she tried the knob, but the door wouldn't budge. Pulling out her cell phone, Casey called her agent and told her what had happened. "Well, I'll start with the good news. They love the unit. They want to submit an offer immediately. They're grabbing lunch real quick, and then they're going to call you right after. However, in all the excitement, I maybe sort of locked my keys inside." Casey's agent laughed, assuring her that it was no problem. She would be in the area soon and could swing by with her keys. Thankful for the free pass, Casey exited through the foyer and headed down to the street to find some lunch for herself. As she set off, however, she was taken back by a knocking sound on the window above her. She took a few steps back to face the building and saw an elderly woman looking down at her from the unit that she had just shown. With a kind smile, the woman motioned back towards the front door of the building. "Oh, fantastic," Casey said, rushing back inside the building. She found that the unit door had been propped open for her, and she spoke as she entered. "Thank you so much. I didn't realize you were in the building waiting. I think we have some good news. The buyers, Casey trailed off when she realized that there was no one in the living room. Casey inspected the bedrooms and the bathrooms, only then to find that the unit was entirely empty. Casey returned to the kitchen to retrieve the keys from the counter, then to find that they were completely gone. As she stopped for a moment to make sense of the situation, she heard the unmistakable sound of the unit's clothes dryer starting, followed by the creaky accordion doors of the laundry closet closing. Making her way back down the hall, Casey again found the area completely empty. Noticing that the dryer was emitting a loud clanking sound, she opened the laundry closet door and stopped the machine. When she opened the dryer door to inspect, Casey found her keys. Confused, she secured the property and once again called her agent to let her know that she did not need to come back. Before Casey could explain what had happened, the agent casually replied, "Good, that place gives me the creeps." So, pretty straightforward ghost encounters, right? A couple of haunted apartments with owners who never left. Or is that the case at all? In Anunya's case, perhaps you and I shared the same initial assumption that the previous owner still resided there and did not want their home sold, making their point known by making their presence known. But why, in that case, did Anunya's client feel something when Anunya didn't feel anything out of the ordinary? And why did none of the other agents or buyers who viewed the unit report anything unsettling or strange? And, of course, why, if haunted by an unshy ghost who objected to its selling, was the unit so quick to be purchased? In an experience, nonetheless, that was described by the new owners in their online review as, quote, "fun and easy process. We are loving our new home." Similarly, in Casey's experience, one could initially assume that the woman in the window is simply the ghost of a previous owner as well. That was indeed Casey's assumption, so after she shared her story, we both set to work looking for answers. Casey spoke to the previous owners directly, and it turns out they're elderly, but both very alive and well. They explained that they lived in the unit for several decades and never once experienced anything unusual. They also said they knew the only other previous owner, the kind young man who sold it to them at closing. As for me, I personally reached out to the building's superintendent and a couple nearby businesses that are within eyesight of that window, asking if they had seen anything or were familiar with any legends, all of whom said they've never felt as much as a weird vibe. Well, with no answers as to whom, maybe we can shift our focus and get some answers as to why. In Anunya's experience, why would an angry ghost who wanted to frighten people away go to the trouble of cleaning up after them? And agreed, it could be in order to keep their place neat and tidy, but in that case, why would they leave a single chair upside down in an act that, according to Anunya, was so hauntingly deliberate? In turn, why would Casey's ghost throw her keys in the dryer? Was it a practical joke? Or perhaps was it so Casey could be able to locate them by sound? It may be a bit of a stretch, but what could be an irrational gesture for us might make sense to a ghost. But in that case, why not just leave them where they were? Casey still has no idea, but she did add a humorous note in saying that after her ordeal, she once left her own house key in her pant pocket, nearly scaring herself out of her wits when she did laundry that evening. So, now you and I likely find ourselves on the same page as Ananya and Casey. Confused, left with more questions than answers, and unsure of what to make of what we just heard. I think you'll find that when it comes to Great Lakes high strangeness, that kind of confusion and weirdness and feeling that you're being led in circles is all pretty straightforward. And with that, thank you sincerely for listening and for giving some time to the straightforward as you go about living out your extraordinary life story. May it be as grand, beautiful, and enduring as our Great Lakes. I'll see you about the water.